When you look in the mirror, do you like what you see or do you wish your body looked different? Are you comparing yourself to the models you see in magazines? And have you ridden the diet roller coaster trying to lose weight and alter your body size? I've done all of this. And if you're like me, it probably made you feel pretty lousy about yourself. And if so, you'll like today's podcast episode on how our body image impacts our self esteem, our sexual self confidence, and our overall sexual expression. And by the way, this information is for all genders. I think almost all of us have struggled with our bodies or have a partner or family member who struggled. This is a tough topic for most people. And that's why I'm so excited about today's episode. I'm hoping it will help anyone who's unhappy with their body size to feel better about themselves. I'm your host, Dr. Heather England, an executive coach, psychotherapist, and relationship expert. Welcome to the Great Sex Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of relationships, whether that's your relationship with yourself, the people who matter most to you, or your relationship with your sexuality. Before I start, I want to give a plug for the podcast. A crazy thing about podcasts is that there are almost 3 million of them, but most don't have more than a handful of episodes. Only 1% of podcasts make it to 20 episodes, and I'm already there. So yay, that's an accomplishment I feel really good about for 2023. Right now, this podcast is in the top 20% of all podcasts, and that's competing against all of those huge podcasts out there that are sponsored by businesses or have celebrity hosts or have been around for 10 years. I don't know where I rank in terms of sex and relationship podcasts, but I think it's probably much higher. I think it's really valuable content, and thus far, it's really been a labor of love. The time I spend on this is time I don't spend on something else in my life. I'm not charging money for the podcast yet, and it's one of the few that. So, the best way right now to help me to keep this podcast going is to subscribe to it, share it with a friend, and leave a positive review or rating. And if you have time, I'd really appreciate your thoughts on what topics you'd like to see more of in 2024. After all, I'm doing this podcast to help people. And so I want to know, what is it that you want to hear more about? So let's jump right in. Today, I'm so excited to have a chance to interview Cassie Wilnauer about this incredibly important topic. Cassie is a licensed therapist serving the Kansas City area, as well as residents of both Kansas and Missouri. She specializes in working with clients on issues of body image, sex, and sexuality. She's done training in perinatal mental health and practices from the Health at Every Size model. I can't wait to ask about that. She's an ASEX certified sex therapist, and she's most interested in the intersection of fat phobia and sexuality. Woo, that is quite the bio, Cassie.
Thanks.
You are definitely well trained to talk about this subject. I am so excited and I can't wait to get into it with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. But as we start first, I would love to know a little more about your journey and what got you interested in this and how'd you get to this place?
So I guess it's sort of like two different paths in my life, and then it has now all converged. So on the one hand, I thought for a long time, like, oh, I think I'd be a good therapist. And underneath that was always like, I would love to be a sex therapist. I've always felt more comfortable talking about sex than other people. I can think back to where I worked in college. I was a manager of this smoothie shop, and I helped, these teenagers just talking about all kinds of different things. And often, as teenagers do, we're talking about sex and sexuality. And I wasn't that much older than them. And so they'd ask me for advice and stuff. And so I went to grad school, became a therapist. And then when the pandemic hit, there were more opportunities to get training for sex therapy because at this point I had two kids. And doing it online was like incredibly helpful for me so that I didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
travel somewhere to do the really extensive training, as you know, that you have to do to become a sex therapist. Um, and so I just, the pandemic hit. I wasn't working as much. I mean, I was seeing clients online, but not as much. And I was like, well, I have the time. Like, let's do it. Started working on that. At the same time, maybe not even realizing how the two things kind of overlap for me, like being a therapist and just thinking about body image and bodies and all of that, I started to become more aware of, as you mentioned, the health at every size movement, and intuitive eating, and really got to a point where I was like, wait, I have literally dieted my entire life. I have
Mm-hmm.
constantly spent so much time and mental energy trying to manipulate the size of my body so that it
Mm-hmm.
can be considered more socially acceptable. And I just got to a point where I was like, wait, I don't actually have to do that. Like, I don't actually have to do that. Um,
I love
and
that.
so I can talk a little bit about the health at every size movement. It's essentially, it's not perfect. There are certainly flaws to it and it needs updating, but it's also wildly helpful in that it's just, it asks people to consider how we think about people in larger bodies and how we think about their health correlated to that. So most often, you know, anybody walking down the street might, we just visited this weekend, we visited some of my husband's extended family, and, they're talking about weight and body size and how healthy someone looks. And I'm just like, that's not how health works. um, and and ultimately, the health at every size movement is just saying, like, let's take into consideration all of the factors that contribute to someone's health. So, like poverty and access to, you know healthy foods and
Mm-hmm.
fresh fruits and vegetables, and how much of their life is dictated by having to constantly be trying to make sure they have enough money so that they can feed their families. Like, that's not going to leave them much time to do like extracurricular exercise type activities.
Yeah, or even leave them enough money to buy healthier foods because it's so much more
Right.
expensive to eat healthy.
Right.
You
So,
know,
we have to kind of think about it from like the social determinants of health perspective a little bit
mm-hmm.
more. And also, like, some people are just gonna live in a larger body, and that does not inherently mean that they are not healthy. Like, I eat way more vegetables than my husband does. um, but I imagine that people probably, well, because people are just um, kinder about the appearance of a man than they are a woman, they probably look at him and think he looks like the healthier one of the two of us. And neither of us are really in, thin bodies, but
This is reminding me of something. I like to swim. It's my
Mhm.
self care. It makes me feel good. I just love that feeling of being in the water. It's just incredible for me. It's almost like spiritual. I mean, I
I
literally
completely
love
agree. I feel
to
the
swim
same way.
laps.
It's so great.
Yeah, and so I was swimming last summer one day, and there was a woman swimming in the lane next to me, and we started chatting at one end of the pool, as we were both taking a little break. And somehow the subject of health came up. And so it's so sad to me to think about the societal messages that we put on people on body size, because she made this comment, because she was a bigger bodied person. And she said, well, I'm not really that healthy. And I said, no, you are healthy. You look healthy. You swim for over an hour, 5 days of the week. I see you at this pool all the time. I said, that is a healthy thing to do. So if you
Oh my
tell
gosh, like
yourself
the
you're
heart,
not healthy, yeah,
it's
it just
making my
made me
heart
so
race
sad.
thinking about that cardiovascular activity.
But it made me so sad for her because it made me think all these messages that we take on that become part of how we think about ourselves, and
Yeah,
so many times
absolutely.
these messages are absolutely false. And you said another thing earlier that just, man, it tugged at my heart when you talked about all the mental energy you were spending thinking about your body, right? And your body size
Hmm.
and how to make it smaller. Like it's like you're trying to do something that, I don't know, is it like a little bit like putting a red or a square peg into a round hole, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
like our bodies are kind of designed to be a certain way.
And I just don't want to fight it. Now, that's not to say that, like, as my body gets larger, as I move away from constantly trying to manipulate it to be smaller, like, there are times when I'm uncomfortable. There are times when I'm like, ugh, I really just wish that I could, I don't know, do X, Y, or Z and not feel annoyed. Like, I was looking for a lamp before we got on this recording because the lighting is iffy in the room I'm in. But I was like, ugh, I don't want to go up the stairs because it's a whole flight of stairs. Like, and like, that's annoying. I want to be able to do that. Now, that being said, I also like got out of the habit of exercise because I had a foot injury that lasted
Mm,
for eons. It was very frustrating, So it's like that I could sit here, and I think a lot of people would that haven't done the personal work that I've done. I could sit here and I could be like, wow, like this is because I'm fat and I hate it. But it's not, we can't reduce it to just that. Like, this is because my foot was injured for a long time and I got out of the habits that I was in, where I did move my body with, you know, a pretty steady frequency. Like, I was exercising a lot before that injury happened. And then the
mm,
injury turned into other injuries and it lasted like 2.5, 3 years. So it's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's been a minute. So I'm going to get winded if I go up this flight of stairs. And I really don't feel like dealing with that right now because we're going to try to record where I need to talk without being winded. So,
Well, I'm really curious about something. I'm chuckling at you. You are so funny. A minute ago, you talked about how you could have given yourself that potentially very negative message, okay, about, oh, I can't go up the stairs because I'm fat. So I know a lot of people listening to this, they're doing the same thing. They're looking at their bodies, they're judging themselves, or giving themselves lots of negative messages, and it really impacts your overall self-esteem. So can you talk a little to that, and just kind of, if there's any way people can help think about making those messages be a little more positive? I mean, how would you help somebody in that situation?
you know, um, when I work with clients, it's nothing new or different in terms of being a therapist. It's all the stuff you already know as a therapist. It's all of like okay, well, like, is that actually true? Like, let's determine, is this a cognitive distortion? Like, is it actually true? Like, the connections that we're making. The difference is, like, when you've done the work to be able to go, oh, like, a lot of people walking down the street, anybody that you meet might go, well, might just accept that like cause and effect of, oh, well, like, you're winded because you're fat, right? Like, they would be like, well, that's just true. And I think the thing that I ask of clients is to go a little bit deeper than that. Like, let's be a little bit more specific. Is it really that? Or is it that you don't go up and down the stairs very often because you have limited mobility? Or is it that, like, I want people to be more specific so that they can just remove themselves from that narrative that says, like, everything about my body is my fault and everything about the way that my body looks is also causing all of my unhappiness in life. It's just not
Right.
actually that direct of a relationship.
And so for listeners, I just want to clarify the what we talk about as therapists all the time is,
Yes.
language for us. So cognitive distortions are thoughts that we might have, things we tell ourselves that are distorted. They're not necessarily grounded in fact. Okay. So what you are doing by helping people to change their narrative, it's also story, is you're trying to help people challenge those thoughts so that they come up with a story. They're creating a story about what has happened or what's going on around them or how they feel that is grounded in truth, not grounded in some feeling or myth or perception or distortion.
Right. No, that's exactly it.
That was a way
Yeah,
for
I
me
think
to
it's
stop the
really
conversation.
important.
Sorry, start
Sorry, what
again.
was that?
I said, well, that was a great way for me to stop the conversation right there. Go ahead.
No, I
You're,
think I think it is really important for people to be able to tell their story in a new way, and that's such a big piece of it. And I think it's subtle little things too. It's like I said, we were visiting some of my husband's family this weekend, and I just one of them. talked about using one of the, the new medications that everybody's raving about for weight loss, the injectables.
Right. Ozempic
Right.
and
They
all
were
that.
talking about using one of those, and they said, I think they assumed, they were a woman, I'm a woman. They've lived in a larger body for most of their life. I too live in a larger body. I think they were assuming that like we could relate about a thing. And so they mentioned that oh yeah, I just took my injection yesterday, so I'm really gonna feel like I have the flu tomorrow. And I think they thought that like I don't know what they thought, to be honest, but I just was like, wow, that sucks. Like just change the conversation, like just change the topic. Cause like I'm not gonna collude with your diet talk. Like I don't want to. And I think that's something that's really um we don't think about being a really big help towards helping your own, like how you feel about yourself, how you think about yourself, but it really does change things when you're able to start to see what diet talk really looks like and choose to
Mm-hmm.
just disengage from it. It suddenly is no longer, like we were talking about, like eating up so much of your time and your
Right.
energy. And like, I don't know, not to get on a feminist rant, but I will a little bit. Like, isn't that what patriarchy wants from women? Like, don't they want us distracted? Don't they want us to be obsessed about our appearance? Like, we can just not. We don't have to. We don't have to. Like, and what will we do with the time and energy that we have? I mean, pass good legislation, maybe? I don't know.
I just got a Christmas card from a really great friend, and it said on the inside of it, three wise men, question mark, and it went, really? Question mark.
I love that. That's
Yeah, it was
brilliant.
pretty good. Well, can you share maybe with our listeners a little about how, I mean, a lot of this is not their fault. Forget the patriarchy, just kind of our culture. Our culture sets us up as females to think that we have to look a certain way in order to feel accepted. We're so objectified, whether it's the whole beauty industry, it's weight, it's hair, it's makeup, it's all of it combined.
Yes. It's so hard. I think there's such a line because while I am a happily married person, I have a little bit more freedom, comfort. I'm not sure what the right word is to sort of be content with how my body is, but as I work with clients that are trying to date and
Hmm.
really struggling with dating, like there is a certain amount of like adhering to beauty standards that feels like a requirement. Um and I hear that the dating scene's quite ugly just in general out there. It sounds like apps are changing and the way that people engage is different and nobody wants to meet in person anymore. I don't know. It seems very messy. So I guess what I just want to give the caveat that like I know that I have a privilege in this situation in that I'm already partnered very happily and like I'm not on the dating scene right now. And that is a very unique place to be if you are a person that's walking around in a fat body. Like, and that's very difficult. But part of what I would say to anybody that's struggling and having the way they feel about their body impact their relationships is just let let your partners see you. If you're a person that's like, oh no, I make sure that no one ever sees me naked, or I always keep my shirt on for intimate time, or I like, they already know what you look like. And allowing yourself to be seen and touched and experience that is so important.
Oh, that's
Um,
beautiful. That is beautiful. And so you're getting into the next question, which is really all
oh,
about
okay.
how do you help people with their sexuality? So I love this. I love that you're going in that direction.
Yeah. A lot of different things. First, I really want to point out that like if you're a person whose body has changed recently, maybe you had kids, maybe you have gone on sort of an intuitive eating health at every size journey of your own and are finding yourself coming out the other end of that with, being in a larger body. Certain things are not going to be as easy, or certain like parts of sex or ways that you've had sex in the past like might not be as pleasurable for you. You might need to change that up and be open to that needing to be different. The same is, I would say the same thing to someone who like maybe went on a medication for depression or anxiety. Like,
Right.
okay, those medications can often like make you struggle to have an orgasm. It doesn't mean that it's impossible. It might mean that now we need a vibrator, or we need to include something else as a part of the equation, because what worked before just isn't going to work now. And that can be true even if your body is the same size but you've given birth. Like, all kinds of things can cause all kinds of things to just be different. Even going through menopause might cause,
Mm-hmm.
certain things to change. You need a different kind of stimulation. You almost certainly will need lube, when you maybe never did before. Like, all of that stuff is going to be true. And I think the thing that if a fat person, a fat woman in particular, but fat people in general are listening to this, I would love for you to walk away knowing, like, it is not a lesser sexual experience if you are employing the use of things that make it easier for you to actually experience pleasure. So if reaching the spot that you want to touch isn't as easy as it once was, they make things for that, and you should find them and use them. Yeah, I don't know. And that goes to what I think as sex therapists we talk to our clients about all the time, which is just like, it doesn't have to look any one way. Do what works for you. Do what's fun for you. Do what the two of you actually like to do. Um, Instead of feeling like, oh, well, it's supposed to look this way or it doesn't count. Who said that?
Mm. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, who did say that? I might add a few links to the show notes for things that might be helpful.
Yeah,
So I'll circle back with you on that
that
later.
sounds great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could definitely send you an email with some stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful. A lot of times people just don't even know about options that are out there for them, and they don't even know how to find out.
I think that's
Mm.
very true.
I've had people I know, clients and other people talk about how hard it is for them to show their bodies during sex and they want to stay clothed, and how just emotional it is for them. And I
Hmm.
assume some of it is shame, and to go through that emotion of being seen, especially being seen by a partner for the first time.
Yeah, I guess the thing I say to those clients, if they're coming to me, is like, well, it doesn't have to be all at once. You're allowed to do what makes you comfortable. I mean, there are plenty of people that have ADHD and they struggle to stay focused. And so then they struggle with arousal or response when in the middle of, they're like, I wanted to be here and I can't stop thinking about, I don't know, the clothes that are sitting on the chair across the room. Like, I tell people all the time, like, play with removing one of your senses. If that means blindfolding or that means turning off the lights in the room, like, that's okay. And if that's what you need to do also to be able to get
Mm,
to a place where you're more comfortable sharing more of your body with your partner, then do that too. I don't, there is, there are thousands of steps between I leave my shirt on no matter what during sex, and I stand naked in a room full with all of the
mhm.
lights on, and you get to take as many steps as you need in between. Like,
What a great message for people, right? Because one, they get to do it the way they need to do it to be comfortable. There's no one size fits all. But I love that you said there are a whole bunch of steps. So people
yeah.
can think a little more out of the box about, okay, what's a little nudge I can take to get in the direction of where I want to go? In a way, that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this podcast. I'm not going to radically change people's sex lives overnight, but or their relationships, okay, and how they feel about their partners. But if they just take little baby steps in a direction, they will eventually make progress towards that direction. And so many
Hmm.
people just kind of give up. They're like, it's
They
like a black and
do.
white thing.
Yeah. And it's not. And sometimes the thing, especially if you're working with, I don't know, if you're working with anybody that's in a relationship, every every relationship, it consists of people who have patterns of how they've communicated with each other for a long time, and it's hard to go outside of that and establish a new pattern. But that's something that I talk with clients about all the time, is it's like, look, like, if you're used to being in the habit of talking negatively about your body, and maybe your partner does that too, but you're trying to change that, like, I'm hoping that your partner is not talking badly about your body, but them talking bad about their own body is going to impact how you feel about yours too. Because if they hate the way their stomach looks and you don't have a flat stomach either, like, that's just not going to feel great. And I think finding ways to communicate with your partner is like, hey, so I'm really trying, I've been reading this book or I listened to this podcast and I've been really trying to lean into, you know, talking about my body with a little bit more positivity, or at least not putting it down
Mm-hmm.
so that I can feel a little more content or at peace. And that's really important. And that's just good relationship building stuff anyway. We're not going to stay the same throughout the course of our lives. So we have to talk about how we're going to navigate when we're making changes.
Exactly. And, I'm older, and as I've gotten older, my body has changed. My husband's body's changed. It is freakishly weird to have an aging body. It's not my mind map of what my body's supposed to look like, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not 20 anymore. And so I've got wrinkles and sags and a little more in some places, a little less in some places. And it's an adjustment to all of that,
Yep.
but we both accept that in one another,
Mm-hmm.
right? So rather than ragging, like if I rag on myself about how bad my body looks, maybe my husband's going to notice more about how bad my body looks too, right?
Right. It's just like, I don't, it feels like wasted energy to me, you
Yes.
know?
Well,
It
it
just does.
is. Yeah. But you're a very positive person, I can tell. Sometimes I have
I try to
had,
be.
yeah, you are. Sometimes I have had a couple in my office, and one of them makes comments like, well, I would be more interested in sex, or I would be more turned on if they lost 20 pounds.
I have never had that experience.
Mm,
I've had individuals say that with their partner not there. I've never had anybody say that with their partner there. I think if they did say that, I mean, honest, I'm pretty blunt. I'm pretty blunt with clients. And I think the thing that I would say is like, here's the problem. You're married to her. Here's the problem. You're married to him. Like, you're married to this person. This is what their body looks like. And we can pull out statistics to talk about how unlikely it actually is to long term be able to manipulate your body to be smaller, which is dismal. Or you can learn to love the partner that you have. I mean, to me, it feels so, it's like saying, oh, my partner's autistic and they have a really hard time making eye contact with me. I need eye contact. That's a part of what I need in a partner. Well, we have a problem then because you may
right,
never get that from this partner. That's really how I feel about it. Is it's like if you need your partner to be in a smaller body, that might you might need a different partner. And I don't, a lot of times at that point, if that's what they say, like I and it's an initial session, like I'm gonna steer the conversation other directions because I don't think that that's actually the problem.
hmm
Um, because if that's the thing that you're holding on to, you maybe don't actually like your partner that much or love
mm.
them.
Yeah, I like how you're unpacking all of that. When I've had that happen, I've explored with the clients, like, well, why is that a problem for you? Like what's going on there? What's your idea of what a body's supposed to look like? To try to see if there's any kind of myth they have in their head, if they have kind of this
Mm-hmm.
template of what sex is supposed to be like, what their partners are supposed to be like. But the other conversation I get into is similar to what you just talked about with what I need my partner to be. I like to talk about deal breakers and non deal breakers. In fact,
Yep.
I'm in, I think, January, I have an episode on that. But, deal breakers are the things that are going to end your relationship. You're,
Right.
they're just things you can't handle. Like it's whether for some people it's cheating, for other people it might be political beliefs or religious beliefs, but you're just not, you
Yep.
can't stay in a relationship with that person because of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Non deal breakers are things that you have to change about yourself in order to learn to live with that person. So you're never going to change your partner's body, their body size. Just like for someone who's autistic and doesn't like eye contact, you're never going to change that about your partner. So, how do you change yourself so that doesn't bug you so much? How do you change
I
yourself so
also,
that you're still really turned on, even if your partner does have 20 extra pounds?
the other thing I like to point out to people too is like, okay, here's the thing. Attraction is extremely subjective. And I would bet that if, the joke list that people talk about having, like, oh, if I ever come into contact with these 5 celebrities, that's my hall pass, like that joke. I would bet that if you go through that list, they don't all look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of those people does look different. And I tell this to people that come to me struggling with their own, like, well, I just don't know if like my partner's attracted to me. And I would say it to the person that's coming saying, I don't know if I'm attracted to my partner. And I would say, look, like, you're not only attracted to one thing. So like, you're imagining this losing 20 pounds thing to mean something that it maybe doesn't actually mean. And maybe at the heart of it, what they want is their partner to stop complaining about how they feel. Because I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely had that. They want their
Mm-hmm.
partner to stop complaining about how ugly they feel. And it's like, they're like, I just need them to stop talking about this. So maybe that's the trick. If they just lost this 20 pounds, we could be done with this conversation. Because they're like, as soon as they say, oh, I feel fat today, they're like, yeah, we won't be having sex for another week.
Yeah, that's really no. I think you've made a really great point. Wow. So we've got about 4 to 5 minutes left. Okay. And I just want to go back and kind of recap a few of the things that you said. One was I heard you say you need to challenge your narrative. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are struggling with body image, challenge your narrative, challenge all those thoughts and see if they're distorted or if they are grounded in truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The next thing I heard was if you want to enhance your sexuality, to, let your partner see you. Don't feel like you have to hide your body, like own your body, be comfortable in your body, feel authentic,
Yeah.
and take however many steps you need to take to get to that place. Okay.
Yeah.
And if it takes you a while, it takes you a while, but do what you need to do for you. And then that kind of piggybacks into the third big thing I heard you talk about. And that was, sex is different for everyone. And you may need to modify how you have sex or do some things differently. Your playbook may have to expand or change. You may have to redefine what sex is. You may have to use some extra accoutrements or something to help you with sex, but do whatever it is that works for you so you can have the kind of sexual pleasure that you want and that you deserve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
So,
think the one thing I might add is to say that if you're someone who's struggling so much in the moment, like you want to have sex, you start having sex, you want to be there, but you can't stop thinking about your body, like
mm,
that's when I always encourage for people to think about like using mindfulness. We're going to meditate, but we're not going to meditate to clear our brain entirely. We're going to meditate to come back to the physical sensations, to get out of our heads thinking about our body and actually experiencing our body. And some of that might mean like slowing down and just saying, oh, wait, I think I need a minute. Like, we got to recalibrate things because I can't stop the train of thought. And so we just got to switch something up. I think that's probably like one of the last points I'd really want to make for people is like, okay, if you're really distracted, there are things to do about that. You don't just have to like be like, well, I don't know, it'll be over soon.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It is amazing to me how much everyone, well, especially females, not to be gendered, but really a lot of times it's the female brain that's distracted because we carry such a mental load of all the
Hmm.
things that have to get done in life, right?
Yep.
We're the ones thinking about all that stuff, doing all that stuff, planning all that stuff. So those thoughts just kind of intrude in our brains at all sorts of strange times, like even when we're having sex. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, did I flip the laundry? Did I turn off the coffee pot? Oh shoot, I need to like call the doctor. I need to, call my kid's teacher. I need to put that note in their backpack.
Oh, I
All,
wonder if we're doing enough to make sure that our kid is not a jerk when they're an adult. Yeah.
so it's interesting, you wouldn't think mindfulness. When I first became a sex therapist, I was like, mindfulness? You're using mindfulness to help you
Hmm.
have better sex? But it's not, I love that you said it's not meditation. It's you're learning to harness your thoughts. You're learning to not let your thoughts completely overtake you. So they're not the
Right.
ones driving the bus. You're driving the
Exactly.
bus, and the thoughts, you can let the thoughts come and go. Right. So if the thought intrudes with mindfulness, you learn, okay, I can just let that thought go right now. I don't have to hyper focus on it and have it completely ruin the experience.
Yeah, and I think so many people will not be able to get back to actually enjoying whatever's going on physically at that moment. And that's why I say, like, take a break, switch what you're doing, like, allow your body to catch up to whatever's going on. And if that requires, like, I hate the idea of anyone being engaged in some kind of sexual activity and at some point just going, well, whatever, like, we'll just let this keep going. Like, participate, participate.
I
And
love that.
even if that means saying, you know what, never mind, I actually need to be done. But
Mm-hmm.
be an active participant enough to be
Right.
able to do that.
Yes. Be an active participant because you have agency, you have a choice, you
Yeah,
have control, right? You're just not there,
right.
being a submissive participant.
Yep,
Oh, well, I think we did it. Thank you
I
so
think
much
so.
for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I think that this is great content, and I think we could have talked a lot longer about all of this. So thank you
Yeah.
again.
Oh, yeah, it was great. I really appreciate you having me.
All right. And in the show notes, I will add some other resources. Maybe I'll get a few books from you, Cassie, that may
Hmm.
be helpful resources for people if they want to learn more about how to help themselves with this.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me on today's episode. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, share the podcast with a friend that might enjoy it, and leave a positive review. Until next time, my wish for you is to create fabulous relationships and live your best life.